Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. So let's ask this question. In order for you to survive for anything beyond a few months in a narcissistic relationship, a lot of you was silenced. For those of you in longer term relationships, many of you have been silenced for years and even decades. In this video, we're going to talk about what exactly is the psychological toll of being silenced. When you are repeatedly silenced in a relationship, can't express how you feel, what you want, your opinions, beliefs, hopes, anything, that takes a big toll on you. So let's explore that toll, because it is sort of a classical part of what happens to everyone in a narcissistic relationship. And I don't think anyone really realizes sometimes the depth of what that does to you, or I don't think enough people realize that. And again, before we get into that, as a quick side note, if you do want to do deeper dives into healing from narcissistic relationships and addressing topics just like this one, please check out the link in the video description to pre-order my new book, It's Not You, that's coming out in February, or please sign up for my monthly healing program, also in the video description. So the narcissistic person at the most primal level actually doesn't want you to exist separately from them. You exist, or they assume you exist, in their service. So for them, all human relationships are about you being there for them, about them, a mirror for them, responsive to their needs, and ideally that you anticipate those needs. So that means if you were to express something separate from them, different than them, they experience it as it's almost like their arm has a mind of its own and it's punching them in the face. These relationships, narcissistic relationships, are about subjugation, and it is this subjugation of you that makes them so harmful. Listen, if all that narcissistic relationships were about was a charming, charismatic, superficial, arrogant a-hole, well, that won't always be pleasant. We sure as hell wouldn't be walking around feeling like shells of ourselves or feeling like we need to heal from these relationships. That's not the part that's harming us. It's the subjugation of being in the psychological service of another person, of never getting to be our true selves or express our true selves. That is why these relationships hurt us. And it's important to understand that, because many people don't understand that. They think, oh, okay, you're in a relationship with a jerk. I know it's not pleasant, but aren't you having too strong a reaction to this? Just don't listen to them. They're just a jerk. I am sure that many of you have heard that. But this isn't just about not listening to them. We all have the capacity to tune ridiculous people out, turn them into the Charlie Brown teacher voice, right? What's much harder to get past, and I'm not convinced that we really can, is being silenced and negated by another person. That's what you are healing from. So the question is, what does it do to us to be silenced and negated and invalidated? Part of the answer depends on when it began for you. If it began when you were a child with a narcissistic parent or parents, the harms are greater. Because from the very beginning, the message was, you don't matter. What you say doesn't matter. Or you learn that what you say only matters if you're parroting what the narcissistic parent is saying or what they want to hear. If you say or are or do or be the way the narcissistic parent wants, then it's fine. But anything else, you learn that that's going to get you into trouble and can impair your ability to get those critical attachment needs met. So as a child, you silence yourself. Maybe not literally, you still talk and say things. But in order to survive with a narcissistic parent, you have to silence your true nature to get anything you need from the parent and to avoid their anger and their psychological abandonment. Obviously, this is incredibly harmful to the social and emotional development of a child, and you go into adulthood not knowing who you are, what you like, what you believe, what you stand for. You don't learn how to express your needs or your wants, and you are at tremendous risk of entering adult relationships where you don't do these things. And so the risk is, again, that a silencer in the form of a narcissistic partner or friend or boss will roll up again. This silencing can culminate in lifelong anxiety and struggles with identity and ever expressing what it is you need or want. Is healing possible after this? Absolutely, yes, but it takes time and lots of digging and facing old demons, particularly self-blame. When your first time at the silencing rodeo is in adulthood, it's still hard, especially if you love the person, and especially if you were taught things in childhood like being seen and not heard, or falling into socialized roles like passivity. And it doesn't happen overnight. That silencing happens gradually. And over time, your needs and your wants are stripped from you, as is your sense of who you are. To be silenced is a hollowing out and can ultimately result or be associated with a bunch of stuff that isn't good. Sadness and depressed mood, irritability, anxiety, purposelessness, hopelessness, helplessness, loneliness, lack of trust in other people. I would argue that what Freud and the earlier psychoanalytic folks observed with their so-called hysterical patients, don't get me started, these hysterical patients from the 1910s, the 1920s, often had mysterious neurological or other weird physical impairments. They were typically women who were basically silenced by the norms and the culture of that time, as well as by what happened to them in childhood, which was really just more silencing and sometimes abuse. They would have, these women would have all kinds of problems. They'd go blind overnight. They'd have parts of their body be paralyzed. They experience them that way. Nowadays, we may see people who feel a variety of stress-related physical issues, from inflammation to headaches to just feeling blah. Silencing is not good for our bodies. It's the stealing, it's the theft of a psyche and a soul, and it makes us sick. In the world at large, people are often silenced because they lack a voice in the world. They are a member of a group that is marginalized or discriminated against, and we see a similar toll. But a narcissistic person can do as much damage as an entire society. And when the two are happening simultaneously, forget about it. The hardest aspect of healing is to unsilence yourself, to find places where you start talking. This, frankly, is why therapy is so useful and important for when you're experiencing narcissistic abuse. But since not everyone has access to therapy, it may mean somebody finding a support group, a healthy friendship, or some other space where you can be yourself and safely make your needs known. As I thought about this video, I had thought about a woman I had known for a very long time, was silenced in childhood by a narcissistic parent, silenced in adulthood by a handful of narcissistic relationships, and then a long-term narcissistic marriage, silenced by siblings, silenced by extended family, and sadly, even silenced by at least one of her adult children. And also, the society this person was from, it was an ethnic minority woman from a really sort of gender-biased culture. So the question that was brought to me was, could she heal? And ultimately, she did. Lots of therapy, lots of setbacks, tons of grief. And the grief was the recognition that she was not going to ever be able to walk away from all of these relationships and family. But she slowly had to build a life that didn't include them. She showed up from time to time with some of these folks. She did her caregiving. She showed up at some family events. She listened to them, whatever they were yammering on about, but never talked about herself to them. But through therapy and building up other relationships, she did slowly come into the recognition that she had a voice. The grief was about the fact that these people who were supposed to be her family, like her siblings, parents, spouse, would never hear it and were content for her to remain silent. She said that in the long term, she was much happier now than she was aware. Now that she was aware that she had been silenced, she found places where she wasn't silenced and recognized that this grief may not ever fully lift about the family stuff. And she just recognizes that sometimes you're dealt a bum hand. To me, that was progress. She also said, what was interesting to me is that she said her health improved upon understanding who the silencers were in her world and recognizing that it was about them silencing and not about her not mattering. And then she said she actually ended up starting to take better care of her health and all of that. Narcissistic relationships aren't just about lies, betrayal, manipulation, gaslighting, and invalidation. They are about having your true self silenced, and all those tactics are part of that. And that doesn't happen without it taking a toll. Your true self is a funny thing. It wants to get out. It needs to get out. And if it is thwarted, we get sick. And this is why narcissistic relationships are downright dangerous for our health. And they really are. I've said this before in other videos and shared this in other platforms, is that I have been struck over all the years I've been practicing in this area. The number of my clients that developed illnesses that didn't make sense given their health behaviors, they didn't smoke and things like that, given their family history, it didn't track. But they often were sort of manifestations of a lifetime of being silenced, and that translating into not taking as good care of themselves, not being taken care of exhausting themselves, trying to please unpleasable people, of the stress of the relationship and the chronic wear and tear and toll that was taking on their bodies. Narcissistic relationships are no joke, folks. Yes, I understand a lot of what's out there is people saying, oh, I dated a narcissist and they cheated on me. And I'm not saying that doesn't hurt. But when this is long-term, this isn't just about feeling hurt or angry. This is about a genuine accumulated toll to your health, making changes and shifting how whatever that looks like. Even the example I gave you, it's not like that woman walked away from everyone and everything, but she learned to sort of shift away from this idea that being silenced, even though they were content to do it, didn't mean she didn't matter. She mattered a lot. And the day we realize we matter, even if just to ourselves or a small handful of people, is the day that we start to feel healthier, treat ourselves better, and may actually get our health back. Thanks again.